Hello, welcome to ants-mourning, the podcast that is also a newsletter. Today, this is titled Ladydick, Yews, Dark Magic. Yews, Dark Magic. Yews with a Y. Like the tree, you know? Okay. You know I love groups of 3, triads, all those things. I'm trying again to fight my crippling perfectionism and not stopping the recording, no matter if I do this too much, which I will do, but bear with me, please, or cough or whatever, so be gentle with me, please. I will try not to edit this, just reducing the background noise and all that, but reducing the background noise and all that, but not cutting anything. I'm nervous, but I want to try this. Let's go. Okay, the first section is titled Etiquette Rules for Illicit Activities. So, October, oh wow. October was pretty much a dark academia month in my home, and it only makes sense now that night falls at 7 in the afternoon. I'm not the biggest fan of this. It's been a bit easier since I met Alex Stern and Darlington, the main characters of Ninth House and its sequel, Hellbent. Those are the two first books in a Lig Bardugo trilogy, and the third and final book, it's not out yet, and I cannot wait for it. Okay, so but I guess everyone academia is, but just in case, it's basically a literary and cinematographic genre, and it's usually set on prestigious education centers, like famous universities, where it's not strange for a dead body to appear, and the rich lab, sometimes with also very exclusive dark magic. It is said that Donna Tartt's The Secret History is the book that brought dark academia to the mainstream, and they also say in the Dark Academicals podcast, the Dark is the book that brought dark academia to the mainstream, and they also say in the Dark Academicals podcast, the Dark Academia reading podcast I've been listening to lately, that the weather is a big factor in these stories, being autumn and winter the perfect time, absolutely deranged. So, not many tropes give me as much satisfaction as the outsider who doesn't have the time or the will to kiss the asses of the powerful, but they have to deal with her because she has something, the power of that dynamic. That's what happens with Alex, the main character in these two books. And I'm sure there's a name for this trope on TV tropes, but I'd rather not looking it up right now, honestly. So yeah, I'm fascinated with by Lig Bardugo's way of characterizing with such precision and with so few phrases. By the way, I told you about Lig Bardugo already on a past issue that was titled P.S. Die. It was not for the listeners, don't worry. And I told you about her then because I just finished Six of Crows. Fun translation trivia. in Spanish, in Spain at least, instead of kissing someone's ass, we say lamerle el culo a alguien, which literally would translate to lick someone's ass. Translate to lick someone's ass. Dare I question, isn't that more humiliating? At least if we're talking about the rich, I'd argue it is more humiliating. Okay, now a few instances of Verdugo's characterizations from Ninth House and Hellbent. And a cheeky note now for anyone who wants to give me something and doesn't know what. I read these books on my e-reader, but I love to have them in paper and in English. Plus examples. The walk back to the campus was long, and the heat felt like an animal dogging her steps, its breath moist against the nape of her neck. But Alex didn't slow her pace. She wanted distance between herself and that grey. That sweat trickled down her back. She wished she'd worn shorts, but it didn't feel right to wear cutoffs for a beatdown. Tell me if that doesn't tell you exactly what type of person Alex is. Okay, another example. Tripp was on the sailing team, a third-generation bondsman, a gentleman and a scholar, a purebred golden retriever, dopey, glossy, and expensive. He was rumpled and rosy as a healthy infant, still tan from whichever island he'd spent the winter break on. He had the ease of someone who had always been and would always be just fine, a boy of 1,000 second chances. And lastly, this other example. Darlington thought, she's witnessed horrors, but she's never seen magic. This was why he had done it, not because of guilt or pride, but because this was the moment he'd been waiting for, the chance to watch them realize that the world they've been promised as children was not something that had to be abandoned, that there really was something lurking in the wood, beneath the stairs, between the stars, that everything was full of mystery. Now, on to the second section, intricate onomatopoeia. In October, we also have the Diálogos del Señor Boliche, those talks with comic book authors and artists and analyzers like me, also because I very much enjoy comic books, of course. And this time they came Pablo Ríos, Julia Cejas, and Aneki. I was especially delighted by Pablo Ríos, who was so very honest about the difficulties of working in the comic book industry. Also introduced me to the word alambicado, which is a very specific and gorgeous way of saying intricate in Spanish. And he talked about his current process of recovery of a depressive episode. I think it's important to bring this topic of mental health to every area of life affected by it, so basically to every area. As Pablo said, or any kind of work you're doing, and it shouldn't be something we walk around when talking about our creative process or our life overall, because it changes everything. So I sent him a hug and a thank you for talking about depression. And these are the titles I wrote down from all the books the authors talked about, so I can read them at some point. By the way, you can follow me on Storygraph, which is the place where I track my readings. My profile there is Miriam _ Navarro _ Prieto. And there you can see what I've read and what I plan to read. Okay, the titles. Azul y pálido, translate to blue and pale, not available in English as of now, sadly. This is his first comic book, a compilation of stories of people who report having been abducted by aliens. This is told from a very non-judgmental standpoint. Then, Bylines in Blood, written by Erika Souls and Van Jensen, with lettering by Cardinal Ray and art by Aneke. This was written in English and follows former journalist, now private investigator Satya, as she looks into her old editor's murder. And finally, Hanami, Tú, Yo, 19 metros cuadrados y jabón, by Julia Cejas, for now in English, soon too, I don't know. The title would translate to Hanami, You, Me, 19 square meters and Japan, and it tells the real story of the author while she lived with her partner in a tiny apartment in Tokyo, and as they... Now I encourage you to look up some interior pages of Bylines in Blood, because it's awesome, and I talk about one of them in the written version. It's basically a page in which, instead of dividing the page with lines, Aneke just used lines made of dirty mop water. Yeah, you heard that right. Also, there is a metaphor, not a metaphor, an onomatopoeia of a splash written in dirty mop water. That's absolutely brilliant. Overall, the concept of this page, of the main character just kicking some bad dudes and their asses with a mop, it's amazing, isn't it? And since we're talking about the main character on Bylines in Blood, I'd also encourage you to have a look at Aneke's Instagram, because she shared there also a character design of Satya. Also, tell me if Ladydick is not a precious pseudonym. That's the nickname of the main character. It's a pity the publishers didn't let them use it, Ladydick, as a title, but to be fair, Bylines in Blood is herself, but I meant it, so let me say that again. She created the need in me to have a trench coat like Ladydick's, because I think those specific hues of blue and yellow would look stunning on me too. Now on to the third section, titled Ariel on Denim. So October was also the first time I ever noticed Ariels, which are the, let's say, shrouds that protect the fruit of the yew, or Taxus baccata, and the, let's say, shrouds that protect the fruit of the yew, or Taxus baccata, and according to Wikipedia, is a fleshy scale which develops into a soft, bright red, berry-like structure. The Ariel, to 15 millimeters long, or 5/16 to 9/16 inches long, and wide and open at the end. A curious species, the yew. Now let me quote again. Ariels are other birds which disperse disperse the hard seas and damaged in their droppings, increasing the chances of successful sea dispersal. And now, as you do, one starts getting worried about birds, or at least I do because it's me, hello. Well, the seed can take 3 years to germinate, but once it does, the yew can live up to 5,000 years. Incredible, right? Apart from the ariel, every part of the yew is toxic. I wouldn't recommend eating the ariel anyway. And that's where one of the Yews vernacular names comes from, mataburros. And in Spanish that means donkey killer, literally. So don't let your dogs eat the fruit because it can be mortal. Bear in mind, those would be lethal for a horse, for example, and many yews have been cut down to stop the cattle from eating it and dying. A human could eat, technically, a fruit and be okay because the seed needs to be chewed to become toxic, but again, I wouldn't risk it. The yew is at the same time a symbol of death. For example, Julius Caesar mentions in his De Bello Gallico how Chief Catovolcus committed suicide with an infusion of yew bark. And the yew is also a symbol of life. For example, in the 18th century, it was considered an anti-rheumatic and an abortive. And yes, I did it on the life symbol section. Yes, I did that. Yews have been found, and I'm quoting again, near chapels, churches, and cemeteries since ancient times, because, again, they can live up to 5,000 years. Of its branches, rooting, and let me start again that quote. Due to the ability of its branches of rooting and sprouting again after having touched the ground, yews turned into symbols of death, rebirth, and therefore into symbols of death, rebirth, and therefore immortality. Let me close this section off with some other vernacular names, which is some of my favorite things about botany. Tejo in Spanish, teixo in Asturian. I'm not sure if that's how you pronounce it because I don't know Romanian. And my favorite, another Spanish variant, has to be tejo encarnado, which would translate to incarnate you or embodied you. Isn't that super cool? Okay, now on to the last and fourth section, which I titled You Open the Tap Not Knowing What Will Come Out. Now, if you follow not knowing what will come out. Now, if you follow me on the newsletter or any of my social media, you've probably seen the last poster of my writing workshop poetry with a dash between goth and punk because that's the kind of person I am, of course. I used a color variant of my fig trees drawing, which you can also find on the written version. And yeah, because that's what color filters are for, right? To take your old drawings and make posters with them, am I right? So, in October, I conducted my most recent session of the Goth Punk Eco Poetry writing workshop, this time aimed at Australians, although we had people from other places too, and I'm not complaining because it was awesome. I love the fact that I have people coming from Australia, England, and a Belgian. each of them writing from a context, talking about different legs of the same beast, that is the environmental disaster that is, and the environmental disaster that can be if we don't change so many things. There were poems written about humpback whales, cellular communes in the human body, Palestinian water, house spiders, so much quality, so much sadness, and so much rage. Now, I'd like to read you a poem my friend Kika wrote in this session of my writing workshop. And this was after my prompt, explore a recent piece of news that environmental issues. And for Kika, that meant writing about the massacre at Al Ali Hospital in Gaza last October 17th. I encourage you to check out the information about the attack on Wikipedia for news site. So you have all the data and the context to get the poem. Also, a trigger warning for bombs, death, and specifically children's death. That's a big thing here, so beware. Also, you can follow Kika and look at the whole poem on their Instagram, which is Kika Win Link. That's written K-I. That's written K-I-K. No, I misspelled that, sorry. K-I-K-A-W. That's where you notice I'm not a native English speaker, but that's okay. Okay, so Kika's poem. When the bombs fall, they will echo. Talk to the prehistory of the center of the earth and infrastructure, but also cut down trees and change the course of the sea. Dystopian novels prove to be real when children are rallied together, a shield of innocence, only to be carried around in plastic bags. A strategic plan to hold off on a second bomb until the people who will help can be taken apart too. On the news, hospitals are being bombed. Imagine the dust, the smoke, the crying. Immunity is not the cure against the snow. In a few years, this shelter that has been a hospital, that has been a school, will be space wasted in a new desert. It is as simple to turn off the water tap for a whole body of people as it is to deploy a missile that is intended to wipe out those same people in the exact same way, only slower. When peace has been restored, there will be traces of the pathways people followed to run away, to hide. Hidden under the erosion of soil that scars as easily as human skin. After reading a surrealist French novel, opening the water tap became a mystery. There is no knowing in what comes out. There are no children. There is no response, only the sighing of the earth. Here, when Kika mentions a surrealist French novel, they're talking about L'écume de Yews, a Boris Vian novel in its English edition. Specifically, they speak about the scene when an eel comes out of a tap. It could seem an out-of-place reference, but L'écume de Yews, with all its surreal moments, also is a very much all its surreal moments also is a very much anti-war tale through a critique of the arms industry specifically. I think the ill scene in the book was more about the under the poverty line state of the characters. They in fact cook the eel in a pie right after. And that links to the water shortage inflicted on Palestinians Kika talks about in the poem. It's true, the poem is on a draft stage, but I conducted the workshop it was written at. It's basically the best thing about conducting workshops. People enjoying them and being able to write after them amazing poems. It's the best, you know. And before I leave, I wanted to tell you about something I've been doing and enjoying very much on my Patreon. By the way, you can find me on patreon.com/Miriam Navarro Prieto. And I was very much inspired by Fran Earth's weekly photo dumps. Fran Earth is Fran Meneses, a Chilean living in New York, and you can also find her on patreon.com/franearth with 2 N's. And yeah, I love her weekly photo dumps. And I started doing monthly photo dumps of my own, and in mine, screenshots and memes I've enjoyed. And if you'd like to know more about what I'm up to, you can always become one of my Patreons and have access to all the content I've shared since. You can always become one of my Patreons and have access to all the content I've shared since October 2021. That's when I started, and I think I've shared since then a lot. And if you pay €1 or $150 a month, you have access to all those 96 posts and everything I share from now on. So I think it's a... Okay, now it's time to say goodbye with a thank you to my lovely ants-mourning subscribers, and a thank you so much to my Patreon subscribers, Lari, Jorge, Rufi, Lucia, Cantufo, Ari, Manuel, and Victor, to whom I send a consensual forehead kiss. Mwah. If you haven't subscribed to my newsletter, you can do so at tinyletter.com/Miriam-Navarro-Prieto. Write your email address and click send and go to your inbox. It could be on the promotions or spam folder, beware. And inside that tiny letter emails, confirm subscription. It's super important, okay? Then you will be absolutely 100% subscribed to ants-mourning. Also, you can go to the same website and have a look at my archive if you'd like to see what I've shared on past issues. Finally, if you have a crush who enjoys science fiction, I would recommend you to send them my previous issue from my archive, the one that is titled P.S. Die, and tell them to check out the Franny Choi poem I guessed, and it's absolutely stunning. And they will say, "Oh, I see you like also science fiction because this poem is super science fiction-y." Okay, that it's all. Next time. Hasta luego.